Hello and welcome to a multi-part series on just Java and Java basics. So today we'll just go over um, how to create a project in IntelliJ and also what classes and methods are along with the different data types in Java. So first, in order to create the project, we'll have this interface open and we'll click on create new project right here. So we'll click there and it'll go ahead and bring up the screen over here for us. So this should be constant. We don't need to mess with Groovy or Kotlin. We'll just go ahead and click next. We do not want to create a project from a template, so make sure that this is not checked. Go ahead and click next, and we can go here and basically name our project. So the way that IntelliJ is set up, it'll automatically be at your desktop. So you can go on desktop and let's say I want to create a folder that says code. So none of these folders here say code. So I can just hit cancel right here. And what I can do is up until desktop, I can delete everything and I can give it a folder called code, and then I have to follow the slash for my operating system. For Mac, it's this kind of slash, but for your operating system, it might be this kind. Doesn't matter, or it matters upon what your operating system is. So for Mac, it's this kind. I'll go ahead and then I'll name my project. So basic Java. And once I hit enter or finish, I could hit finish and it will say, hey, this directory does not exist. If you hit OK, this directory or folder, if you want to call it that, will be created by IntelliJ. You're fine with that, so you can hit OK and give it a second, and then it'll load up. So once it does load up, you'll be greeted with a sign like, or a screen like this, and we can just go ahead and get into full screen mode right there. And if this project bar is not open, you'll just have to click this little tab over here, click it, and this project bar will be open. Now, this is the name of whatever you named your file type, basic Java, and you can click this little arrow down and get to this src folder. So right click on this src folder and it'll open up a bunch of these options and things. You just want to go up to new, and normally we would have a new Java class. That's where we would write all of our code. But for today, we're not coding, just going to be talking about the fundamentals. So I will click File, and this could be any kind of file. But for me, it's going to be a text file, so I can type and I won't get any syntax errors. So I'll just write basics.txt, and I need to include the txt. And I hit enter, and there we have it. So now below this src folder, this basics.txt file has been created. Now we can just get rid of this tab since it is a little bit annoying. Now, the first thing that I want to talk about is classes versus methods. The second thing that I want to talk about are data types. So these are the two things that we're going to talk about, but for today, or for right now, we'll talk about classes versus methods. So think of a formal paper. Okay, so the class would be the entire paper, right? So if you think about it, what does a paper consist of? You have the introduction, you have paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and then let's say a conclusion, right? So all these these 5 elements all together make up that make up your class. Whereas in a method, right, a method would be like, for example, your intro, or paragraph 1, or paragraph 2, right? So as you can see, it's like a more specialized version of one of the elements from your class, right? So if you think about it in a if you think about it in an app way, right? Snapchat could be the entire class, and the method could be taking a photo or adding a friend or sending streaks or something like that. So it's basically that a method has like a specific goal or a task to do, whereas the class like contains everything. And they both kind of work together. You can't have a method without a class, and classes without methods are essentially useless. So you'll need methods and you'll need classes, and at least one method per class. The one method is the main method. So you'll learn more about this in the next video, but for now, we'll just talk about like what it is that, well, we'll just talk about the fact that it exists. The main method will be the first method that you'll write. Later on, you can write hundreds of methods for one class, or you could write 100 different classes and each have one method, but that's up for, that's for you to decide. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about today are data types. So there are about 4 to 5 different data types that we're going to use here for Java. Obviously, there are many more. There are arrays, array lists, and things like that. But for our scope here right now, we only have these 4 to 5. And I say 4 to 5, you'll see why. So the first one is strings, known as string, int, double slash float. This is why I said 4 to 5, because they're extremely similar, and then Boolean. So we'll start off with string. So first of all, notice how I did not capitalize any of these other data types except string. So string needs to have a capital S, otherwise if you have a lowercase s, Java won't recognize it and it'll give you an error message. But if you have a capital S, it's all good. So a string is basically anything that's between 2 quotes. So I could have the number 5 between 2 quotes and it's a string. Or I could have, I could have jump between 2 quotes, and that's also a string. I could also have like a plus sign. So as long as something's between 2 quotation marks, it's seen as a string. And this could be anything from a whole like paragraph, it could be just like a number, or it could be a sentence. That's completely up to the coder and the user. And then the second data type, and usually the most used one, is int, and that is simply a whole number. So in int data types, there are no quotations. You just simply write the number out. So an int example would be 4, or it could be 65. But Java does not, one thing to keep in mind is that Java does not differentiate, Java does differentiate between 6 and 6.0. So when you write 0.0 or write 0.00000 all the way up until, however much you want, these are 2 different data types. So this is an int and this is a double or a float. So doubles and floats are essentially just decimals. So you can have a double or a float as 7.8, or you could have it as 7.00000. Both of them are seen as doubles. Now, if I try to use 7.0000 right here as an int, I will get an error message. So this right here is not allowed. Similarly, if I try to go down here and use, for example, 9 as a double or a float, I will get an error message. The reason being, doubles and floats are always decimals, and even if they're a whole number decimal, they need a 0.0. And for a double and a float, the minimum decimal places that you need is just 1. You could have 7.0 and you're done, or you could have 0, for like 45 different spaces. That's completely up to you. And then the final data type is Boolean. So Boolean expressions always equate to either true or false. And the easiest way to explain this would be just a Just an example. So if I were to write 2 is equal to 3, right? You would obviously say no, that is false. So the result of that would be false. But if I were to write 2 is equal to 2, you'd say, yeah, that's true. 2 is equal to 2. Similarly, you could write, is 4 plus 2 equal to 65? No, it is not. So then that would be false. But 4 plus 2 is equal to 6. Yes, that is true. So Booleans only hold true or false, but you have to understand that when it writes true or false, it is not, so it is not written as, for example, true. It is not written as a string. It is stored as simply true. So you have to understand that when you're trying to work with code, you can't mix strings and booleans together. A boolean is a boolean and a string is a string. Booleans will never return a string value, and strings won't return a boolean value. So for today's video, that's about it. The next one, we will talk about what a main method is, and we'll actually write a main method and jump into some elementary code.